Recently, Jubilee hosted a debate featuring Jordan Peterson against a group of atheists. I've always been a Jordan Peterson fan. He got me really into Jungian psychology, and really helped me synthesize evolutionary psychology with my prior philosophical positions. I had always liked Joseph Campbell, mythology, and the philosophy of religion. When Dr. Peterson started to blow up, I read his books, watched his lecture series on the Bible, and even watched his college classes while I worked through his hardest book, Maps of Meaning. Like many, I see myself indebted to his work and would say he has had a massive influence in my own way of thinking about practical ethics. I also am very inspired by his idea of making Peterson Academy, and I hope we have departments in Jungian psychology which continue Dr. Peterson's work and build upon it. As a Christian, I see Jung's thinking as an untapped vein for Christian philosophy and ethics, and see Peterson as contributing to natural law ethics from an evolutionary standpoint. That being said, having watched the debate and reading through the comments, I thought I would give my perspective of his arguments, a perspective from the standpoint of someone who is familiar with his work, who has done their homework and has a background in philosophy, and so who understands where he is coming from and has had their own thinking shaped by Peterson. So, I'm going to focus on 3 debates with 3 young men. These were the ones Peterson seemed to struggle the most with, and which the comment sections are celebrating as a defeat for Peterson. I did not see that when I watched it. What I saw was a man struggling at times and who was not as prepared for the trip-up questions, paradoxes, and gotcha questions being used. And I was surprised he wasn't, since he had to know what he was walking into. The first we shall address is the Nazi problem of lying. Peterson seemed familiar with it, so I was surprised he was not prepared to address it. Here it is.
How would you define belief? Something you say?
That's why I explained, I could believe it is the case that this pen exists, but if someone threatened my life, right, I would lie in order to be able to save my life, right? I think you would do that too. You wouldn't lie to save your life?
Don't be so sure.
You wouldn't lie to save your life?
How much do you know about me? I didn't lie to save my career. I didn't lie to save my clinical practice.
Would you lie to save your children, your mom, your dad?
I don't think lying would save them.
Can there ever be a circumstance logically that lying could save someone?
Yeah, and if you're steeped in sin, you're likely to live in circumstances like that.
I'll give you an example. If you're in Nazi Germany, and it is the case that there's Jewish people in your attic and you're trying to protect them, would you lie to the Nazis?
I would have done everything I bloody well could, so I wouldn't be in that situation to begin with. It's a hypothetical, and it's not answerable.
Hypotheticals?
Now, I'm not really going to try and rebuttal this. Again, this is not a true argument, it's a trap and a gotcha moment. But one Dr. Peterson should have had a stock answer towards. So what I will give instead is a reply which I think would have better represented his position, and which could have made the strategy he used when answering the question stronger, which is that if we are to take the situation seriously, that we are hiding Jews, then the Jews he is hiding would have been there for probably a duration of time, weeks, months, years, and that given that situation, he would probably have thought extensively about problematic scenarios, maybe even having notebooks filled with reflection and possible solutions to various problems which might arise, including this one. Such preparation would have been the practical solution of a pragmatic thinker like Peterson, to be as prepared as he could for such situations, and to have meditated for countless hours on how to handle them, and on what to say if they arose. However, since he is here on the spot dealing with a hypothetical, and hasn't really undergone the stress, anxiety, and depth of analysis he would have on to how to respond to problematic situations like this, whatever he says is surely not a real answer to what he would actually do. Solutions that would have been the product of dealing with that situation for a prolonged amount of time. This approach would have allowed Dr. Peterson to avoid playing this trolley problem game, and avoid answering the question which seemed to be his strategy, while at the same time maintaining his strict advocacy of not lying, since he could argue that over the course of weeks or months of preparation, he would find ways to answer without lying. But since this hasn't been a real problem for him, he can't give a real answer. The second was regarding worship, and in particular worshiping Mary. This was given by a kid who has a YouTube channel called Danny Phil Talk and recently posted a video titled, "I Ended Jordan Peterson's Career." Here it is.
Name?
Danny.
Danny.
You're saying atheists worship things or people or places, whatever. Can you be very clear about your definition of worship again?
Attend to, prioritize, and sacrifice for.
Okay, that's it. That's your understanding of worship.
Well, I could flesh it out, but that'll do for the time we have.
Okay. Do Catholics attend to Mary?
Yes.
Okay. So do they fit that description of worship?
Yes.
So you would say Catholics and other people that revere Mary, like the Eastern Orthodox tradition, worship Mary.
Well, they might not put her in the highest
But
place.
you would put it that way.
No.
You just said it. Now you're taking it back.
There's
now?
still a hierarchy.
Okay, there's a hierarchy, but within the
There's something at the top.
All right, you can worship things
Mary is
below.
quite a ways up the hierarchy, but not at the top.
Let's go over your definition of worship again. What's your definition of worship?
Attend to,
Attend to. Do
prioritize,
do
and
Catholics
sacrifice for.
what do Catholics attend to? Do they prioritize Mary over all other human beings?
No, I didn't say overall, did I? I didn't add that to my definition.
You understand?
I said there was a hierarchy as well.
You attend to
So you can
Catholic.
attend to something trivially, or you can attend to it deeply.
And now you're adding stuff to the definition. But your original
I
definition.
added the hierarchy part at the beginning.
Are you
just
familiar?
didn't understand it.
Are you familiar with the Immaculate Conception?
Why is that relevant?
Because you go to a Catholic church, don't you? Or you've attended recently. You're interested in Catholicism, aren't you?
Sure,
All right. Are you familiar with their doctrines?
somewhat.
Okay, you're familiar.
doctrines are
How
very
do they
deep.
regard Mary?
Why are you asking me that?
Because you're a Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christian versus atheist?
I don't know.
You don't know where you are right now.
Don't be a smartass.
Well,
and I mean,
either you're a
'cause
Christian
I won't
or you're
talk to
not.
you if you're a smartass.
Oh, either you're a Christian or you're not. Which one is it?
I could be either of them, but I don't have to tell you.
You don't have to tell me. I was under the impression I
private.
was invited to talk to a Christian. Am I not talking to a Christian?
No, you were invited to.
I think everyone should look at the title of the YouTube channel. You're probably in the wrong YouTube video,
You're really quite something. You are.
aren't I? But you're really quite nothing, right? You're not a Christian.
Okay, I'm done with him.
Now Peterson is trying to answer, but keeps getting reframed and forced into an ad reductio of his ideas, and instead of a discussion where Danny is trying to get clarification on things he might not understand. However, Peterson has a fine framework. He just couldn't get into a discussion on transcendental goodness and participation of goodness with someone who was talking like they had 5 Red Bulls prior. Peterson was dealing with participation. God is the cause of all goodness. So anytime you attended to something good, you are attending to something that reflects God. All good things in the universe together are not God, but reflect Him. To worship God is to worship that which gives all good things their goodness and being. The transcendental goodness of God gets a special priority as that cause of all other goodness, but attention to anything good is still to some degree attending to God, since the good participates in Him. While Mary is a creature who reflects God with a perfection only angels have in creation, being sinless, but she's still a creature. She receives her being and goodness through participation too, so you couldn't worship Mary because she is not the source of the goodness you would be worshiping. You can reverence, adore, stand in awe, but that is still in her perfection in revealing God, not in being God. Anytime you attended to something good, you are attending to God in so much as that good participates in God. So anytime you attend to something good, you are worshiping the God who gave it that goodness through your attention. You are vaguely, and in your peripheral, meditating upon divine glory, and so worshiping God in the peripheral. You are just not worshiping with your full mind, heart, and spirit, or with depth. It's a diminished attention, a gestalt form of worship, where you are sacrificing attention to other things and other actions for the one you are attending to. Participation is all super old stuff. It's 1st century pseudo-Dionysius. JP wasn't coming up with anything any theist hasn't already thought about or doesn't already know. He was just articulating phenomenologically on the fly, in terms of attention rather than metaphysics. The final was this one, perhaps the most annoying because it had the potential to be the most interesting, dealing with the issue of free will. It was also the hardest question to deal with and one theists wrestle deeply with. It's really a PhD thesis level question. However, the kid seemed to have a very rehearsed and two-dimensional understanding of the argument he was making, and which his interest appeared to have stemmed more from its utility in discrediting Christianity, rather than on the real nature of the will and causality, or in dealing with the complexity of the problem. Here is his argument.
1,000 years of deep thinking philosophers would disagree with you. But
Yeah, and
your own way.
1,000 years of, or at least like the last 50 years of philosophers would disagree with you. These analytic philosophers. People like Graham Oppie make arguments about the incompatibility of omniscience and free will, that if God created this world, if he chose this world instead of that world, then he makes it causally inevitable every single action that you were going to make. If he made a world where we were just electrons in love, then none of this would have happened. But by making us in this world, world, knowing exactly what's going to happen in the future, it makes all of those events inevitable, which means that they're all causally determined, which means that we have no free will if you believe in an all-good God, or an all-knowing God that made everything.
No, have it your way.
Okay, cool.
I don't-
So then the
I
free will
don't-
theodicy fails.
Well, it fails for you. That doesn't mean you've disproved it. I mean,
Do you want to
tried
respond to
make
the argument?
Yes, you tried to make a case for a causally deterministic universe. I
Yep.
don't think there's any evidence for that at all.
Do you think that God could have created a different universe than the one that he created?
I have no idea.
Okay, so then there's going to be a double bind, right? So either he couldn't have done it, in which case he lacks of power, or he could have done it, in which case we don't have free will, because he chose this world instead of that world, making the events of this world instead of that world inevitable with his infallible knowledge.
I don't understand where you're headed.
Well, it just means that the free will defense fails. Like all this, under
Like I
your
said,
view,
if you
under
want
your
to have
view,
it
free
fail,
will.
no problem. I don't know why it's relevant to the issue we're
Do you
discussing.
acknowledge that under your view, free will doesn't exist?
No.
Oh, then do you want to respond to the argument?
You'll have to phrase it more
Sure,
clearly
okay.
so that someone
So-
like me can understand
Yeah,
it.
yeah, got you. So God already knows in advance everything that's going to happen, which means that by making this world instead of that world, everything is inevitable, which means that God's act of causing this world instead of that
Inevitable
world,
doesn't mean determined.
it's causally inevitable if God chooses this world instead of that world.
Doesn't make it
causally,
determined.
Causally inevitable means determined.
No, it doesn't.
Absolutely, yes, it does.
Well, have it your way.
If God's not powerful enough to create free will, then God's not all-powerful. Nor does knowing something cause something. I know a chair is in my room. I'm not causing my chair's existence in my room by knowing it. While God can know something and will for it to use its own causal structures to perpetuate its existence, he doesn't need to directly intervene in every object's action. Only will its existence and will the causal structures proper to its existence. He only needs to will the existence of the laws of physics for my chair to be in my room, and knowing that it will burn when I light it on fire doesn't mean his knowing also caused it. He only needs to cause all the causes necessary for that to be a possible choice for me, such as the laws of physics. Further, if I put the chair in another room, I know, and caused it to be there, but it's not necessarily less perfect a universe if I don't put it there when I could have, nor if I burn it or don't. More or less perfect how, in what way? We need to qualify how one state is more perfect than another. You have to have a metric of good and perfect to say something is more or less perfect. The metric of perfection is God's will. This kid is using his own idea of what perfection would be. He also seems to imply a deterministic universe is more perfect, that a perfect universe would be determined, and an imperfect one would have free will, which is a strange position. But if we assume God is all-powerful, he could, regardless, create an imperfect universe and make it the most perfect universe at any moment. A temporary imperfect universe doesn't make his will imperfect. All-powerful means all-powerful. God can create from nothing, destroy death, have evil, serve good, bring perfection from any condition, permit imperfection as a material to bring about perfection, just as nothingness was used to create the universe. That's literally what the claim of salvation is, to create new perfection in an eternal state from this current fallen universe's state. Neither does this kid demonstrate an understanding of secondary causes, nor of active and passively causality. For example, I take aspirin, God allows it to heal me, he caused all the properties that create that effect, but I actively took the aspirin, so God both healed me as well as my will using my knowledge of aspirin's affects also healed me. God caused the existence of my will, the existence of aspirin, the existence of my knowledge, but I actively willed the aspirin for health. And taking this back to the earlier question, I actively willed a good and so willed God. God's will was done in me willing him by willing a good that participates in his goodness. The problem is applying analytical logic incorrectly. Just because you can create a logical paradox doesn't mean there isn't a logical resolution. These atheists were too satisfied with using parlor tricks to appear to win, rather than see if these are actual problems or if there are actual answers. Paradoxes are only seemingly contradicting, and it's a sleight of hand to rely on them in debates. Also, the real difficulties arise with predestination. That's where an educated atheist would have taken the discussion if you really wanted to stump Dr. Peterson. This is just Redditor's version of, can God make a rock too big he can't lift it, can't answer? That's because I'm smarter than you.